Thank you.
I call Kiritapu Allan.
Well, unlike the opposite side of this House, Madam Chair, I believe that it's an obligation we owe our citizens is to duly stand and speak to these issues of substance that are going through this House, because these are, Madam Chair, in fact, the issues that shape our nation. Now, Madam Chair, before I just turn to commence my more formal remarks, I did just want to pick up on a couple of points, because I noticed that the opposition, or some of the opposition, keep erroneously referring to the bill as a taxation-based erosion and profit-sharing bill. But if these multinational corporations were actually sharing the profits domestically, there would actually be no need for this bill at all. Sir, Madam Chair, my apologies, Madam Chair, you don't look anything like us, sir. You know, the issues here is that there has been no sharing by these multinational corporations of the fair, just and equitable input that there should have been into our local economy, because it is in fact being shifted overseas. I was reflecting on the actual real-life implications of this type of legislation for folks up in the regions, and I saw there was a chap by the name of John Russell from my friend Willow Jean's electorate up there in Kawakawa, 81 years old. He's been taxed about $40 million per annum. He's doing great things up there. But in contrast, you have multinational corporations like that of Apple, and my colleague, the Honourable James Shaw, mentioned before, when their sales exceed $550 million here domestically, but they're paying less than $10 million to the taxman, and the taxman that indeed makes sure that we have the things that we need as communities to thrive and survive, like schools and healthcare systems and the whatnot. But when they don't pay their fair share, and it's lumped on the guys like Mr John Russell, 81 years old, up there in Kawakawa, to come up with these gross amounts of tax when there hasn't been, I guess, a real contribution by all of those that I guess are taking the liberties of operating their companies within our domestic economy. Madam Chair, that is indeed a cause of concern, and therefore, back in 2012, it wasn't. I mean, the debate around profit shifting it's a global debate, and this taxation, neutralisation, base erosion, and profit sharing bill is New Zealand's domestic remedy to, I guess, give effect to the multilateral agreement that was signed earlier this year. Madam Chair, I do want to just commend the intentions of both sides of the House for trying to get our tax system right. I think we can all agree, whatever side of the House you're on, is that whoever is operating their company domicile, they are not necessarily domiciled, but are operating and taking a fair chunk of New Zealand residents' cash, that they too should actually be required to pay their fair share. So the Multilateral Convention to implement tax treaty-related measures to prevent the base erosion and profit shifting treaty, or the multilateral instrument signed earlier this year, was indeed, I guess, the global solution that this bill then gives the domestic effect to. Madam Chair, if you go to the guts of it, this bill's all about fairness. It's just basic stuff. Yeah, it's just about fairness. And we know that right now, I mean, there's different numbers that have been cited. So globally, they're saying that there's in excess of about $770 billion that is tax monies that has not been appropriately accorded to the right domestic residents. Locally, the figure domestically ranges anywhere from a couple of $100 million through to the $1 billion figure that's been cited previously in this House. $1 billion gives my colleague here, the Honourable Shane Jones, $1 billion to plant his 1 billion trees, and you know. Manuka, which creates jobs and so on and so forth. So this bill, this tax bill, while not a demonstrably reform of our entire tax system, but we're seeing a number of reforms across the bridge. Madam Chair, I believe this is a split chair, so I better not go on and on, but I do just want to say I will keep on going because that is important that I keep on going. It is. All right, excellent. There we go. All right. So not only does this bill increase fairness, that's right, well, I'm just winding up, just you guys wait. Well, this is about protecting our tax base, strengthening our tax base. Now, you know, unlike the previous government, where they invested, I think in the period of 2013 to 14, I think they invested with their Ministry of Social Development, spent about over $40 million hounding down those deviant dole bludgers that had not paid their tax. Meanwhile, and I think they recouped about $20 million. Meanwhile, you had multinational corporations that we knew were rorting the system for over $1 billion in revenue that wasn't coming back to New Zealand domestically. But IRD, I mean, it's tricky. We know it's hard. We know it's hard to trace multinational corporation dollars. But this government, they decided to pursue the little guys, pursue the poor guys, pursue the guys that were on the edge, barely making ends meet. Meanwhile, multinational corporations are operating domestically and completely rorting us while we all sort of sat in their hands and we knew it. So yeah, the debate around profit shifting, it has been globally recognised since 2012, and I just want to the prior member, the member Lawrence Yuill, and he'll know this, been in local government for many years, that when issues are raised, it's only good government to act. Now, this government had 5 years set on their hand, 5 years since 2012. 2012 was when the debate started. In 2013, the report came out. 5 years sitting on your hands. Meanwhile, we're letting the multinational corporations run a rort and do what they do. This government was actively pursuing the beneficiaries, trying to recoup some cash and sell it to the general populace that you're doing a great thing because you're chasing down those lawbreakers. But the reality is, it's just easier. It's easier to chase down the little guys that are breaking the law for not paying their fair share when it comes to being on a benefit. But it's a lot tougher tracing down multinational corporations that have sophisticated global operations. Yeah, and collectively, I'm really proud that the Honourable Stuart Nash from your region, must be a Hawke's Bay thing, and be very impassioned about tax and revenue. It's impressive, but I'm really fortunate and glad that the Honourable Stuart Nash is actually introducing the Taxation, Neutralising Base Erosion and Profit Shifting Bill, which in effect it does requires four things from multinational corporations. That they pay their fair share of tax by strengthening the interest limitation rules. And those are effectively interest payments on debt as an expense to a company, deductible. Therefore, a New Zealand-based foreign-owned company can reduce its taxable income by borrowing from its foreign owner rather than issuing shares. The second thing that this bill does, Madam Chair, that we're really proud of, is that it addresses permanent establishment avoidance. So, other proposals in the bill address the ability for multinationals to structure their operations to avoid having a taxable presence, a permanent establishment, if you will, so that they're not taxed on their sales in New Zealand. Well, this bill proposes a new anti-avoidance rule for large multinationals. With over £750 million in European turnover, in EU turnover, that will expand the criteria for a multinational to be considered to have a permanent establishment here in New Zealand. And Madam Chair, the third thing in terms of addressing permanent establishment avoidance, this bill also contains administrative measures that strengthen Inland Revenue's powers to investigate those large multinationals that do not cooperate with a tax investigation, and that's really been an issue for IRD, and I think that we expect to hear substantive submissions on that in the Finance and Expenditure Select Committee, Madam Chair. The third thing that this bill does is it strengthens the transfer pricing rules. Now, those transfer pricing involves the pricing of cross-border payments between related parties. Parties can shift taxable profits out of New Zealand, Madam Chair, look, I was getting so riveted into the nuances and the effects of this bill, I lost time. But, Madam Chair, I commend this bill to the House.
Speaker.
I call Hamish Walker.
It's an absolute honour to